Hello, and welcome to an introduction to English language. So, my name's Jonathan Binfield, and I teach English language. We're going to be joined today by my colleague Maria Butcher, who also teaches English language, and two of our Year 13 students, Fardis and Matilda.
Hi.
We think Matilda's going to pop up in a minute or two during the course of the talk. She's just logging in. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to take you through some slides and talk you through the course, and then we'll have time for questions. Yeah, okay. So first of all, I'd just like to say that studying English language at Hills Road is a challenging subject and an enjoyable subject. You can, if you don't believe me, you can ask the students about this later. Okay, we're very keen on making you, encouraging you to think independently in English language, and English language is a subject that really helps you question assumptions about the world, and that's a theme I'll pick up on later in the talk. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. I'm going to stay on this slide for a little while because it contains quite a few aspects of the course. One of the first things to say about English language is that it's really quite different from English language at GCSE. There are a number of very new things, and I'm going to draw your attention to some of those now. So you'll see in the left-hand top corner of the slide here, child language development is a major topic that we do in English language. And clearly that's really different from anything you've done so far at GCSE. So we look at how and why children develop the language skills that they do. Why do they say the strange, sometimes very funny things that they say? Why do young children say, I goed, or I wented, or untrouser me? That's a genuine one, by the way. Why do they say that? Because they haven't heard it from their parents. I mean, I don't think there's a regional dialect where anyone says, I goed, possibly Somerset, or untrouser me. So it's interesting, and we have to look at the different theories as to how and why that happens. For those of you thinking about what subjects it links up with, I mean, this topic actually hooks up quite well with psychology. English language goes very well with many, many different subjects, but this particular topic has a link with psychology. Okay, so that's child language development, and that's a major component of the course. So another component of the course is language diversity. And with that topic, we're looking at how language varies according to the region of the country that you live in. So this applies especially to spoken language. So I'm sure you're all familiar that in the north of England, the word that's spelt Grass is pronounced grass, and in the south it's pronounced grass. In Scotland, you might hear someone refer to a wee bairn. That's a little child. So there we're looking at regional dialect vocabulary and grammar and pronunciation. So as well as varying by region, it might vary, your language use might vary by age. So for example, do you think that I use language in exactly the same way as you do? So if you've logged on to this presentation, I'm guessing you're probably 15 or 16 at the moment. And when you talk to your friends, I suspect you probably use language in a slightly different way to the language that I use when I chat to Maria after this presentation. Okay. So language and age is another one. Language and gender. So is it true that men and women speak in a different way? Do we have different conversational styles? Some people think yes. Some people think that, women are naturally more cooperative than men, who are more competitive. So, women, for example, when you're talking, they'll do lots of things like, yeah, to signal that they're listening and following what you're saying. Sometimes when that happens and they say at the end of it, but I don't agree with you, man gets really angry because he thought that that kind of was agreement, but it wasn't necessarily agreement. It was just, I'm listening to you. Anyway, is it true that there are big differences, or is it just stereotyping? That's another thing that we'll look at. So we also look at social background, different social groups, and occupation. So each occupation might have its own jargon. Doctors have medical jargon, lawyers have legal jargon, and teachers have teacher speak. Okay, so that's language diversity, how language varies according to various different social circumstances. Then I'm moving across the slide to the right and looking at the linguistic analysis. So I think it is important to say that we do analyse language, and we analyse it in quite a lot of detail. And you have to do it in a more technical, linguistic way than you would at GCSE. So I don't know if you can make out that diagram in the top right-hand side of the screen, but there's some quite detailed grammatical terminology there, like prepositional phrase, etc. So some of that might be more detailed than you're used to at GCSE. I'm not saying this to put you off, but to make you aware that that's an aspect of the course. It's quite analytical. You have to get a little bit nerdy about language, okay? But I think that doing that, you're not just doing it for its own sake, you're doing it so that you can reveal underlying meanings in texts. Okay, so in the end, it's quite fun. Right, now I'm going to move over to the left-hand side of the slide, where we've got a little picture, couple of pictures to illustrate the language change topic. So we look at the way the English language has changed over time, and indeed how it's still changing right now. So that picture on the left-hand side is from a manuscript, a handwritten manuscript, because it's from the days before printing, and it's a bit of Geoffrey Chaucer from the 14th century. I can't actually read that even with my reading glasses, but a bit of Chaucer might go something like this. Juan nat April with shore suta, the doctor match at persit the ruta. Now that's a bit of Middle English, and it sounds a bit different, doesn't it, from today? Don't worry, you don't have to study Middle English texts. I'm just giving that as an example of kind of English you would have heard if we could go back in a TARDIS to the 14th century. And then nowadays, of course, we've got a lot of very rapid language change caused by the advent of the internet and social media, and that affects the way we use language. Okay, so language change, a major topic. Again, quite different from GCSE. So a lot of what I've been talking about so far is very analytical, but there is some creative writing. So English language is a course that is both analytical and creative. So our current students at the moment are working on creative writing coursework. I'm sure if you want to ask them questions about that, then they'll be happy to answer. And really, it's quite a free choice about what you choose to write about. So perhaps we'll come on to that in more detail later. So on this slide, we're comparing English language with the other two Englishes that we offer at Hills Road. So you have the choice of doing English language, single English language, or English language and literature combined, or English literature. Okay. So if you do English language, you're not really studying any literary texts at all. We might look at some literary examples, but we're not studying whole novels or plays or poems. Okay? So if you really wanted to study literature, then English language probably isn't the right one for you, and you'd want to look at either the combined or the single literature. So basically with the literature, you do twice as much, as many literary texts as you do for the combined. With English language, you look at extracts from at least 1600 up until the modern day. but they're not necessarily literary extracts. And we're also looking at spoken as well as literary texts. Whereas with the combined, they do 20th century writing. They look at some American texts like The Great Gatsby. Whereas in English literature, you study everything from Shakespeare to modern day poetry. The English language combined does also give you an opportunity to write creatively. So if you really want creative writing to be part of your course, then you should look at single language or language and literature combined. The single literature doesn't offer creative writing as part of the course. Okay, so that's the overview of the differences between the three Englishes. I'll say one more thing, and that's on terminology. So if you do literature, then the kind of terminology you use is literary terminology. So you're mostly using terms like metaphor, alliteration, that kind of thing that you're familiar with from GCSE. If you're doing English language, then you're not primarily focusing on those literary terms, but more on linguistic terms. Okay, so more on grammatical terminology. So subordinate clauses, bound morphemes, that kind of thing. If you're not sure what a bound morpheme is, then you could Google it. Okay, so that's a final comparison between three. Obviously, if you've got more questions about that, we'll be happy to answer them later. So what skills will you gain if you take English language? So I think you gain a lot of skills, and we put some of them on this slide. So one important one is clear, coherent writing skills. So I think you will get this whichever English you choose, but it's very definitely one we prioritize in English language, and you will get to write for lots of different purposes and contexts. So the next bullet point there is about using the right language for the right context. So I think you have a heightened awareness of that if you do English language. And because you've analysed such a variety of texts in English language, in the future, whether you're at university or in employment or just in life generally, you've got the skills to analyse any text that gets thrown at you. Once you've done English language, even a text from your friend, you'll be better at seeing the subtext. Which takes me to the next bullet point there, which is spotting the subtext and working out what they really mean. I think you'll be more equipped to tell. And that could include, when the politicians of either party, any party, are trying to persuade us of something. You've studied English language, you'll probably be able to see beneath the surface there. And I'd like to get on to the independent research point there. So an important part of your English language course is to do an independent investigation project where you get to investigate an area of your own choice that you've become interested in. You actually treat language as data there, so it's kind of scientific, and you analyze your data in a very close linguistic way, but you also research the relevant theory and studies that will help you analyze your data. So independent research skills really get developed through doing that project. And we also think that understanding the way that language changes will give you a sort of head start and give you an alertness to the way language is changing around you. Okay. So again, if there's any questions that you want to ask about that, we'll be happy to answer them later. So just a few more slides and we'll get to the questions. Yeah, so assessment so this will be the same for all of the English courses that we do in the department. So you have 6 key assessments during a year. These get scaffolded, which means, we give you help with structuring essays and so on. So at the beginning of the course, you get more scaffolding, and then gradually, you learn to do it for yourself because then you can do it for yourself in the exam in the end. So we model things for you. We show you sample essays, sample creative writing that have been done by previous students. So you can have a look at those and learn from those. We also do some peer and self-assessment, as well as feedback from teachers. Okay, so there's plenty of reflection and evaluation, and then reapplying the skills that you've learned. So extension and enrichment. So some of the way this is done at the moment is a little bit limited by COVID, which we hope is going to change. So in a normal year, we get visiting speakers in and we have a language conference. So we normally do that in June. We weren't able to do it this past academic year because of lockdown, but we will be looking at bringing in speakers to do talks on Zoom. And we hope that by the time you arrive at Hills Road, they'll come in person. Again, we like to do trips to specific events. So we have taken English language students to lectures before. We have taken them to the British Library, where there's a guy called Johnny who organises things at the British Library. They've got absolutely fantastic resources for studying English language. So we have taken students there before. We're not sure if we're going to be able to do that as a large group this year, but hopefully when you join, that will be back on the agenda. Yeah, so we offer you reading around the subject and opportunities to write for subject-specific publications. So there is actually a student from last year who got a piece published in one of the English language specific magazines. Right, so plenty of opportunities there. And support. So obviously you are supported by expert subject teachers in class. I and Maria and Alison, who also teaches English language, are very enthusiastic and quite expert in the subject. So we help you. We also try to manage the transition from GCSE. There's peer group support. So we like you to work together in pairs and small groups to support each other. We also offer sessions. Sometimes these are extra sessions. These are sometimes targeted for one-to-one support, whether it's on coursework or for catching up. And we also offer support with university applications. Okay, again, any more questions on that, we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, and there's just a couple of slides here on student performance. So this is based on a 3-year average. So in English language, we get 99% pass rate on a 3-year average. So that probably means one student in 3 years was not able to pass. Then moving over to the left-hand slide, so the B to A star grade is 66% on the 3-year average. And I think it's worth just comparing that with the national average of 39%. You know, on average, the Hills Road students outperform the national average by quite a large margin. Yes, and this is about student destinations. So these are, I think this is the most recent year. So these are courses taken by students who studied English language at university. So a number actually have gone on to do English language with linguistics, which you're clearly very well prepared for if you do English language A-level. English language or straight linguistics. So those are the 3 subjects that English language are most obviously applicable for, but they're also good for journalism, and we have students who are doing that. We have students who are doing law at university now, international relations, English literature. So there are some universities who will accept you to do English language, even English literature, even if you've only done English language. Liverpool University, for example, do that. Though it is possible, if you're really seriously committed to English, you can do a separate English language and a separate English literature course at Hills Road if you want to. So some of our students have gone on to do primary education degrees, even marketing and marine biology, which aren't as obviously, marine biology isn't as obviously relevant to English language, but I'm sure even marine biologists need good use of language. Right, so I think we're now getting to the point where we introduce you to our, to our year 13 students, and I hope you're able to see them. So, so we have Fardis and Matilda, who are both studying English language in year 13. So maybe I could just ask Fardis briefly to say how you find studying language at Hills Road and what you enjoy most about it.
Hello, I'm Fardis. I find I do enjoy English language quite a lot. I think my favorite component of it is probably the child language component, because I also take psychology, so it links quite well. But I also quite like the creative writing aspect of it too.
Great. And how about Matilda? What would you say to the same question?
I think for me, obviously, like you said, so it's so different from the GCSE English language, and I knew what I was expecting, obviously, because I did the open evenings, but it really it surprised me how interested I became in all of it. And I think for me, I noticed a question as well on the chats asked about A levels complementing English language, and for me, it's really helped and complemented my sociology A level, and that's something I've really enjoyed in looking at language through a sociological perspective as well. That's been really fascinating for me.
Great. Okay, so I think I'm going to hand over to Maria, who's been looking at the questions.
Okay, so we'll start off with really very popular question. We get asked this a lot. Would English language be viewed similarly by Russell Group universities as would English literature for law? And really the answer to that would be that individual Russell Group universities would have their own response and own requirements. English language is a very academically rigorous subject where you are looking at evidence and balancing up evidence in order to produce an argument. You also learn, for example, aspects of persuasion and rhetoric and how language can be manipulated to develop an argument and give a particular representation of an argument, or indeed some sort of case almost. Certainly, I know where that question is coming from, and if you're thinking about facilitating subjects, you do need to look at particular universities and their criteria. But having said that, if you are enthusiastic about English language, you will excel at it. And if you excel at an A-level like English language, most universities will recognise that as being a very facilitating quality. You know, so it is highly regarded. And of course, many sort of linguistic courses would demand it, but there would be some law and linguistics or law and a foreign language, perhaps if you were looking at something like that, where it would be very well regarded. But the answer really is you would have to contact, if you've got a particular university and a particular law course in mind. Some of them may, for reasons of tradition or their particular law criteria, they may prefer the literature, but it's not been my experience. And certainly, as Jonathan said there in the presentation, we do send quite a few students off to study law. So I hope that helps, but you can also always get in touch with our careers department, who are very experienced, and they have a record of where we send students. So if you wanted more details about that, you would be able to ask them. So thanks for that question. Is English language or English literature regarded more highly by universities? Sorry, that's on the next one. I think I've answered that really just now with the Russell Group question. I'm going to move on to what is the creative writing component like specifically? Is it particularly demanding, and how much of the final grade does it contribute to? So creative writing is part of the coursework. The creative writing part is 10%, and that combines with another task, an investigation task. It is a creative task where you are asked to either to write something like an article to inform somebody. You can also write a piece that tells a story, that narrates an experience like the start of a novel or a short story. Or there is an option to do a persuasive piece. Could I ask Fardis, you're doing creative writing at the moment, could you just say a little bit about which piece you're doing?
Yes, so at the moment, I've said I'm working on the creative writing component of the coursework. And the piece I'm doing is an opinion article. I'm doing it on like fashion trends and why they aren't particularly the best thing to follow. But I've also had a lot of people doing it on, they've done like advertisements or stories. So there's a whole range of ideas of what you can do.
And you are introduced to a style model, so you look at plenty of example texts within your genre, and then you develop one of your own.
Yeah.
Tilda, which original writing piece are you doing?
So I'm doing a story, and I've used Harry Potter as my style model. So it is very different to what Fardis is doing. But yeah, so as you can see, just with that, there's definitely a scope to delve into your interests. I know people that are doing, one of my friends is doing a persuasive piece on vegetarianism. So you can really use it to extend your knowledge on what you're interested in and write about it, which is really good.
Excellent, thank you. And we do, of course, throughout the course, we do small pieces of creative writing in order to prepare you for this, and for some aspects of the exam where you might be asked to do an opinion piece or something. So there's lots of creative writing infused throughout the course, as well as the 10% that goes towards your final grades.
So I noticed a question that was on a similar topic where somebody asked, can I do poetry? And the answer is that you can. So, you know, you have a choice of storytelling, persuasion, or informative text. So, you know, you could do a poem that tells a story as long as you found a suitable style model. That's the key thing. And if if you really like poetry, then there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. So really, the precise genre is up to you. So there is quite a lot of free choice, but you just have to be able to show that you've got the inspiration from a style model. Okay, yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay, so Imogen asks, what are some A-levels you believe complement English language? So really, I would say that English language complements almost everything. As you can see, we had a marine biologist a couple of years back. I think it's the analytical skills, the working with text, presentation of yourself, and understanding the presentation of others and how language is used. So if you're going off to study science, you still need to be able to articulate and sometimes persuade people to take on your point of view, or even to give you the funds to do your studying. But I would definitely say English language complements psychology and perhaps the foreign languages. So if you're doing a foreign language, that works very well together because you have a understanding of the grammar, and also you can appreciate different perspectives on looking at language and looking at how we translate and actually what translation means. Equally, some of the subjects like history and philosophy, you're dealing with weighing up evidence and formulating arguments and putting your case across. So any of the essay subjects. I should also mention within the department, film and media, we have a lot of students that do media studies, because the way you look at things analytically is quite similar. You are studying texts, and in our case, non-fiction texts. But also, as I say, the sciences, and we have some students, certainly in the past, that have done it as a fourth subject to complement their application to medicine or something like that. So, you know, a whole range really. But you kind of need to sort of design your A-levels around perhaps what career, but also what you're good at, what you enjoy, and sort of looking at, some people want varied skills. Everything almost, I think, Jonathan, I'd say sits with English language.
Yes, I think it does go very well with almost anything. I mean,
so Matilda, could you just say what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm currently doing history and sociology, and I find that all my subjects work really well together, especially, like I said previously, sociology. Even there's a couple of theorists that overlap, which has been really useful.
Yeah, so you'll have.
And I got to pop up in class, go, oh, I know who you're talking about. And yeah, no, I think, like you said, the writing analytically and being able to form a coherent argument it's beneficial, not just across your subjects, but in sort of wider life, and being able to write. And I think with me, like all my subjects are all essay subjects, so that it's really complementary to both the subjects I'm doing.
Yeah. And Fardis, I think you do psychology as well.
Yeah, so psychology links quite well with the like I said, the child development topic in English language links quite well with the attachment topic in psychology. And like Matilda, a lot of the time there's like theorists and stuff that come up in both subjects. I also do biology, which links quite well with coherent writing, and also when looking through like how to produce sounds and stuff. And looking into like the actual structure of the body and the face and stuff, that also links quite well with biology. So I've already got a familiarity with all of that.
Super. I mean, I was doing that the other day with the sort of cross-section of the vocal tract.
Yeah.
I think you can perhaps see it behind Jonathan there on the board. And so there is a physical element to it. Thank you very much. Okay, Rebecca's asking how big are the class sizes? Anything really round about 16 and upwards. I would say we cap the class size at 24. For English language, I think it usually comes in around about 20 in a class. I have one this year, it's a little bit less. It depends how the class sizes work out, but generally across the college, the class size is capped at 24. Okay, thank you for that. How many students take English language each year in contrast to English language? I think that's a literature there. So we do have a cohort this year. We have 3 classes, which amounts to, I think, around about 50 students, I think, Jonathan. Yeah. Sometimes it'd be a little less, some years a little more. English literature, I think that question refers to, would be a bigger cohort. So we would have maybe 180, 200 students in the literature. And I think the Lang Lit combined, that's somewhere in the middle there. So it isn't as popular with us. I know that in other parts of the country, it sometimes is much more popular, I think, just depending sort of historically, really. But we have got a really thriving department here. And as a smaller department, you know, we can really, we really have got a great deal of expertise, and we have our own identity within the department, within the college. Okay, thank you for that. What are some examples of independent research projects that students have carried out in the past? That's a great question. For me, the independent research is one of the best parts. And if you're looking at preparing yourself again for something like law, going out and getting, harvesting data and then coming and interpreting it, and sometimes actually producing some very original research, is one of the most exciting things. So we have people doing a range of spoken and written projects, ranging from looking at accents and dialects, looking at the development of American English, maybe recording some American speakers, or looking at the language of football commentaries, and looking at how commentators describe particular players. We have projects on language and gender. I'm going to go back to Fardis, who you should be pretty much in the thick of your investigation at the moment.
Yeah. So my investigation is on, like you said, language and gender, but I want to see if the theories and stuff we've learnt in class, if they apply the same to when you're like texting, so on your phone, if you've got the same language features that we've discussed between the genders.
Okay, that sounds really good.
Oh, I think she's muted.
Muted, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure what Matilda is doing, but of course, Fardis's example, looking at gender and looking at technology. So quite a few students will look at. It used to be a couple of years back the language of email. Now it's more like the language of WhatsApp, and looking at text and how language habits, perhaps. Within text, give us represent ourselves, how we represent ourselves in text, in the written, but it's a kind of mixed mode texting. We talk about it as being, because it's sometimes halfway between the spoken mode and the written mode. So that sounds a really interesting one.
Shall we give Matilda another go at answering that? Matilda, can you unmute and tell us what you're going to do for your investigation? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What are you going to do for your investigation?
I'm really interested in language and gender, and I know it's something we've sort of previously touched on in our lessons already, and I'm really interested in looking at the different ways, especially I know we looked at the study of doctors, and obviously I don't want to look at the same study, but talking about direct speech and how we looked in that study specifically, males are often more direct in that particular study, and I'm really interested in looking into that further.
Thank you. I mean, that is something that along the course we do encourage you to begin to have ideas. So at the moment, just before the summer, we were looking at child language, and I know some of our students will go off and perhaps record children of a similar age and compare their development, or maybe look at a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and look at the ways they use language and their habits. So child language also is a really fascinating topic, and does generate lots of research. There's lots of research available, and often a student will take a model of research, like I think Matilda has, and see if they can prove it in their own collection of data.
One of the most fascinating projects that I read 2 years ago was a student who compared. This was an investigation about the way language changes and the way it varies. So he compared a rap battle with a 14th century Scottish Middle English thing called a flyting. Now, a flyting is where two poets insult each other in 14th century Scots Middle English. And actually the structure of it is the same as a rap battle. They both have insults. I mean, they've got quite a surprising amount in common. But then of course there's lots of differences in the kind of language they use as well. You know, so you can also do something slightly thinking out of the box. So I really enjoyed that one.
That sounds really fantastic. So lots of scope. And again, like the creative writing, you are free pretty much to look at a project. Some people have a grandfather that speaks a Scottish dialect or something, and they'll use that as their data. So, your own interests come to the fore really there. Last question here up is the combination of Lit and Lang as one single A-level considered as facilitating by universities? Is it considered highly and well respected? Okay, thank you for that. Yes, I mean, what I can say is similar to that answer about the literature and the law. Again, really, I would go for what you feel you're going to enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're going to excel at it. Again, some universities may have a preference for one or the other. Obviously, if you're going to do a linguistics degree, you're far better plumping for English language. And if you know now that you're going for straight lit, you should do that. Having said that, some universities still preserve courses, combined courses. And I would say that even going back 20 years, I have a very fond memory of an excellent student who did the language and literature course. And she went off to Oxford to do literature degree. So really, it's about looking at the criteria with those universities and what they say about a particular course. And it's not too early to be approaching, emailing admissions tutors and asking what their opinion is. And they are the best informed people, as well as the careers people at your school, to give you an answer for a specific course. But I can't reinforce enough that you should look for something that you know you're going to enjoy doing. Because if you don't enjoy it, you won't excel. And what universities really want is people that are excelling and enjoying and interested, that they're going the extra mile in their subject. Can I just reassure you that if you have any other questions, please do pop them in the chat or contact us by email. There will be people who are looking at messages and emails over the next few days to help with any queries that you've got, both in the department and in the college as a whole. And these webinars will be online for you to access retrospectively after half term. So I'd like to say thank you, everybody, for joining in tonight. Thank you to my students and my colleague, Jonathan. But most of all, everybody that has registered and is inquiring about English language. It is a really fantastic subject, and we really enjoy teaching it very, very much. And we have some great students and fantastic discussions in the classroom. And that's what really matters. Okay, thank you all very much, and I hope you have a very good evening. Jonathan, did you want to just...
No, I think, thank you very much. I think you wound up everything really well. So it's goodbye from us.
Cheerio, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.